She was just a maid. At least, that's what everyone believed. But when a rival dared to touch her arm in Victor Castellano's dining hall, the most feared man in the city walked in, his voice low and lethal. "Who touched you?" Minutes later, that man's empire began to crumble, and by dawn, the whole city knew she wasn't just his maid. Behind the walls of a mansion ruled by shadows, Elena Hart, a woman running from her past, finds herself protected by a devil whose touch feels like salvation. Was his offer a cage or a promise? In a world where danger and desire walk hand in hand, love can be the most dangerous game of all. Before we begin, if you believe that even the darkest hearts can still protect what they love, make sure to subscribe. It's free and helps us share more stories from Desire Tales. The scent of furniture polish clung to my skin like a second layer as I rubbed circles into the mahogany dining table. 30 feet long, this table had probably witnessed more criminal dealings than a courthouse, though I pretended not to know that. The mansion was quiet that afternoon too quiet, with only the occasional footsteps of security personnel patrolling the grounds. Outside, rain tapped against the floor-to-ceiling windows, blurring the immaculate gardens surrounding Victor Castellano's estate. I wasn't supposed to be in this room. The main dining hall was usually cleaned by Mrs. Petrovich, but she'd called in sick, and I had been reassigned. 3 months working as a maid in this fortress of a home, and there were still rooms I had never entered. The thought made me shiver, despite the warmth of the day. "You missed a spot." The voice froze me in place, low, controlled, with that slight Italian accent that became more pronounced when he was angry. I hadn't heard him enter. I never did. Victor moved like a predator, silent and deliberate. "I'm sorry, Mr. Castellano," I said quickly, not turning around. "I'll get it right away." I felt him approach rather than heard him. The air in the room seemed to shift, molecules rearranging themselves to accommodate his presence. My heart hammered against my ribs as he stopped directly behind me. "Look at me when I speak to you, Elena." Slowly, I turned. At 34, Victor Castellano commanded the largest criminal enterprise in the city, yet he looked more like he belonged on the cover of a business magazine. Dark hair cut precisely, stubble that never quite became a beard, framing a jaw that could have been carved from marble. But it was his eyes, dark as midnight, filled with secrets that held me captive. "This is your first time cleaning this room?" "Yes, sir. Mrs. Petrovich is ill." He studied me, gaze traveling from my face down to my hands, still clutching the polishing cloth. I fought the urge to hide them. 3 months of scrubbing and polishing had left them red and rough, nothing like they'd been when I worked at the hospital. "You've done well," he said finally, "better than the old woman." A compliment from Victor Castellano was as rare as snow in July. I lowered my gaze, unsure how to respond. "Thank you, sir." He moved past me to the head of the table, running one finger along the polished surface. "Join me for a moment." Again, not a question. I glanced at the clock on the wall. I still had 3 rooms to clean before my shift ended. "Sir, Sit, Elena." I obeyed, perching on a chair 3 spaces away from the head of the table, close enough to hear him speak without raising his voice, but far enough to maintain the distance between employee and employer. Or so I thought. Victor slid into the chair directly beside me. The scent of his cologne, something expensive and woody, enveloped me. Up close, I could see the faint scar cutting through his right eyebrow, the shadow of stubble along his jaw. "How long have you been with us now?" 3 months, sir."
And before that, you were a nurse at St. Mary's Hospital. My stomach tightened. I had never mentioned my previous job to him.
Fair, perhaps, but not what you're worth. Before I could respond, the double doors swung open. Angelo, Victor's head of security, stepped inside. "Sir Maroney is here?" Victor's expression didn't change, but something in the room did. The temperature seemed to drop several degrees. "I told you I wasn't to be disturbed," he said, voice eerily quiet. Angelo paled. He insisted, "Says it's about the shipment from Calabria." Victor sighed, a sound so normal it felt out of place coming from him. He stood, buttoning his jacket in one smooth motion. "Wait here, Alina. We're not finished." I watched him leave, Angelo a half step behind, the door closing softly behind them. I should have returned to work, should have finished polishing the table and moved on to the library as scheduled. Instead, I sat there, heart pounding. Victor Castellano had never singled me out before, had barely acknowledged my existence beyond the occasional nod in the hallway. Now, suddenly, he knew my history, my secrets, my name. Whatever game he was playing, I couldn't afford to be part of it, not with Ryan depending on me, not with everything I'd sacrificed to keep us safe. I was halfway to the door when it swung open again. Not Victor, but Maroney, a man I'd seen visiting the mansion several times before, always with an entourage of hard-faced men who looked more comfortable holding guns than conversations. "Well, well," he said, eyeing me with unconcealed interest. "Victor's hiding the pretty ones in the dining room now." I lowered my gaze, trying to sidestep him. "Excuse me, sir, I need to finish my work." He stepped into my path, close enough that I could smell the whiskey on his breath. "What's your name, Bella?" "Please, I need to go." I clutched my cleaning caddy like a shield. Maroney chuckled, reaching out to brush a strand of hair from my face. "No need to rush. Victor and Angelo will be arguing for at least another 10 minutes. Plenty of time for us to get acquainted." I stepped back, but the massive dining table blocked my retreat. "Mr. Castellano asked me to wait for him." "Did he now?" Maroney's eyes narrowed, the leer shifting into something calculating. Interesting. The boss doesn't usually concern himself with the help. My skin crawled as his gaze traveled down my body. The uniform, black pants, a simple white button-up shirt, wasn't revealing, yet I felt naked under his scrutiny. "Just passing through," he murmured, reaching out again. This time, his fingers clamped around my arm. His grip dug painfully into my skin. I dropped my caddy, bottles clattering against the hardwood floor. "Let go of me," I hissed, trying to pull free. "Feisty. I like that." Then, "I believe she asked you to let go." Victor's voice, cold as ice, sliced through the air. Maroney released me instantly, stepping back as Victor entered, followed by Angelo and another guard. "Boss, I was just—" "Who touched you?" Victor ignored him completely, his gaze locked on the red marks forming on my arm. "It's nothing, sir," I whispered, trembling. "Who touched you?" Each word was a blade, sharp and deliberate. Before I could answer, Victor's hand shot out, gripping my wrist, not harshly, but firm enough that I couldn't pull away. He turned my arm, examining the bruises as a shadow of fury passed through his eyes. "It was a misunderstanding," I said quickly. "I'm fine, really." Victor's voice dropped to a near whisper. "Angelo, escort Mr. Maroney to his car. Ensure he understands he's no longer welcome in my home." Maroney flushed. "Victor, over a maid? Be reasonable."
The Calabria shipment will proceed without your involvement, Victor interrupted flatly. The expression on his face must have been terrifying, because Maroney actually took a step back. Consider our arrangement terminated. Angelo moved forward, hand brushing the gun under his jacket. Maroney hesitated only a second longer, realization dawning. She's not just a maid, is she, Victor? The silence that followed was deafening. Victor's thumb brushed my wrist, slow, deliberate. Get him out. Angelo obeyed, ushering a protesting Maroney from the room. When the doors closed, Victor turned to me. Are you hurt? I shook my head, unable to speak. What had just happened? What had Maroney meant? Victor released my wrist, kneeling to gather my scattered supplies, the sight so incongruous it stunned me. The most feared man in the city, on his knees, picking up bottles of polish. Sir, you don't have to... This evening, he interrupted, rising to his full height. You'll join me for dinner. I can't, I stammered. My shift ends at 6, and I need to...
Your shift ends when I say it does, Victor said, tone gentle but final. Dinner, 8 o'clock. Wear something nice. He paused, his next word softer. Please. That single please undid me. I nodded, unable to find my voice. Victor smiled faintly. Good. Now, I believe you have the library to clean next. Just like that, I was dismissed. By the time I left the room, my pulse still thundered in my ears. I didn't understand his motives, his protection, his fury, his command. But one thing was certain. After today, the walls I'd built around my quiet, hidden life had cracked. And as I would soon discover, the man who broke them wasn't done with me yet. That night, as I stood over my sleeping son, Ryan, in our tiny apartment, his baby-fine hair glowing softly in the lamplight, I realized something chilling. Victor Castellano's world had already reached into mine, and the moment he asked, "Who touched you?" I ceased to be invisible. The drive back to the estate was silent. Angelo made no attempt at conversation, and I was too nervous to start one. The city lights blurred past, fading into the quiet opulence of Victor Castellano's world. Rather than the main entrance the staff used, Angelo drove to a private side gate I'd never seen before. Inside, polished floors and dim sconces guided us to a smaller, more intimate dining room set for two beneath a crystal chandelier. "Mr. Castellano is waiting," Angelo said, opening the ornate double doors. Victor stood beside the cable. No suit jacket tonight, just a crisp white shirt open at the collar. The more casual look should have made him seem approachable. It didn't. "Elena," he said, my name low and deliberate in that accented voice. "Right on time." "I didn't have much choice," I murmured, before I could stop myself. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Good. Now, I suppose you didn't." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Please, sit." I obeyed, uncomfortably aware of how different this was from our earlier encounter in the dining hall. Then, I'd been in uniform, his employee. Now the boundaries felt blurred. "Wine?" he asked, lifting a bottle already open. "No, thank you." He poured himself a glass instead, the ruby liquid catching the light. "You're wondering why you're here." "Among other things," I admitted. "Ask, then." I hesitated. "How did you know where I worked before? About my specialization?" Victor took a sip, watching me over the rim of his glass.
I know everything about the people who enter my home, Elena. It's a matter of security. You didn't know about the others when they started. Maria told me. Maria should mind her own business, he said, still calm. But you're right. I typically leave staff vetting to my head of security. Yours was of particular interest. A chill slid down my spine. Why? Before he could answer, the doors opened and 2 servers entered, silent and precise, setting delicate plates before us. When they retreated, Victor gestured for me to eat. I'm told you skip lunch most days. Another detail he shouldn't know. I picked up my fork, mostly to buy time. You haven't answered my question. No, he agreed, I haven't. He cut into his fish with surgical precision. Then, tell me about your son. The fork slipped from my hand, clattering against the plate. How do you know? Ryan, how do you know about him? 10 months old, yes? He continued evenly. Fear sliced through me. I pushed back my chair, ready to flee. If Jack sent you... Jack didn't send me. His voice cut clean through my panic. Jack Thornton doesn't know where you are. No one from your past does. I froze, half standing. Then how do you know? Sit, Elena, please. I'm not here to hurt you or your son. Slowly, I sat, my pulse pounding in my ears. What do you want from me? Victor set down his utensils and looked directly at me. 3 months ago, a woman with a newborn appears in my city. She has nursing credentials, experience in one of the best neonatal units in the country, yet she applies for a maid's position under a false name. She rents an apartment under another. She has bruises she tries to hide. He leaned forward, voice low but unwavering. You were running from someone powerful, a man who hurt you. My throat tightened. Why do you care? Something flickered behind his eyes. Dark, human, haunted. Because my mother had similar signs when I was a child. No one helped her. The admission startled me. For a moment, I saw not the ruthless crime lord, but the boy who'd made a silent promise to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. I still don't understand. Why hire me? Why this dinner?
I hired you because you were qualified and desperate. That combination usually ensures loyalty and discretion. He paused, taking another sip of wine. As for dinner, Maroney's actions today accelerated a timeline I hadn't planned to initiate yet. Timeline? Your ex-husband's family has been making inquiries in the city, he said. Discreet ones, but inquiries nonetheless. My blood ran cold. He's found me. Not yet, Victor said, but he will. The Thorntons have resources and ambition. I know exactly who they are. I tried to steady my breathing. What does this have to do with Maroney? He saw me take an interest in you. By now, he's told half the city that the maid in my house is something more. We're going to let them believe it. I stared at him. You want to pretend that we're involved? Precisely. Why would you do that for me, a woman you barely know? He swirled the wine in his glass, voice quiet. Let's just say I have my reasons. That's not good enough, I said, surprising even myself. Fair enough, he replied. The Thorntons are encroaching on territory that concerns me. Jack's father has political ambitions that could complicate my business interests. You need protection, I need leverage. This arrangement gives us both. And if I refuse? You won't, he said simply, because you're a mother, and you'd do anything to protect your child. The truth in his words stung.
what exactly would this arrangement entail? You'd move into the east wing of the mansion, private quarters separate from mine. You'd no longer work as a maid. To the outside world, you'd be my companion. Your mistress, you mean? Call it what you like, Victor said evenly. You'd accompany me to certain events, be seen with me in public. Nothing more would be required. Ryan would live here as well. I'll provide a qualified nanny. I let out a bitter laugh. You want me to raise my son in a house full of criminals? This estate has security measures that would make the Pentagon envious, he said, voice hardening. No one enters without my knowledge. No one. He wasn't wrong, but still, the idea of surrendering control over my life again terrified me. And when this charade ends, when you're done with me, then you'll be free to go with enough money to start over somewhere safe. It was tempting. Safety, security, a chance to stop running. But at what cost? I need time to think, I said finally. Of course, Victor nodded, but not too much time. The Thorntons are getting closer. As if on cue, my phone buzzed in my purse. I pulled it out, frowning at an unfamiliar number. May I? Victor asked, extending his hand. I hesitated, then gave it to him. His expression darkened as he read the message. What is it? He handed the phone back to me, eyes meeting mine. It seems we've run out of time. The text glared up at me. Olivia, it's been too long. I hear you're in the city. We should catch up. I'll be at the Westmore tomorrow night. For Ryan's sake, I hope to see you there. Jack. How did he get this number? I whispered. The question isn't how, Victor said, rising. It's what happens next. He came to stand beside me, his presence both protective and terrifying. I can protect you, Helena. You and your son, but only if you let me. My world tilted, every instinct screaming not to trust another powerful man. And yet, as I looked into his eyes, I sensed something I hadn't felt in a long time. Sincerity. Perhaps it was desperation. Perhaps it was hope. All right, I said finally, my voice barely audible. I'll do it. Something like satisfaction flickered across Victor's face. Then let's get your son. Tonight, you both stay here. As he led me from the room, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just made a deal with the devil. The question was, would this devil prove better or worse than the one I was already running from? Morning sunlight streamed through windows larger than my entire apartment bathroom, painting golden rectangles across a bed that could have fit 4 people. For a moment, I didn't recognize where I was. Then I heard Ryan's soft babbling from the adjoining room, and reality returned. I'd slept in Victor Castellano's mansion in the East Wing, as promised. A suite that rivaled any luxury hotel. Ryan had his own nursery, hastily but expertly arranged during our midnight move. Someone had even brought his crib, his toys, his blue blanket. A knock at the door startled me. A young woman with auburn hair and a soft British accent entered. Miss Hart, I'm Sophie, the nanny Mr. Castellano hired for Ryan. She handed over her credentials before I could ask. Of course, Victor had anticipated that. You said I'd want to verify them. After she left, I fed Ryan breakfast from the trays Sophie had brought. Eggs Benedict, fresh fruit, pastries still warm. The kind of breakfast I hadn't seen in months.
Guess we're not in Kansas anymore, little man, I whispered, brushing a crumb from Ryan's cheek. By mid-morning, the room turned into a flurry of preparation. Sophie returned, efficient and kind, taking Ryan for a walk in the garden, while Valentina, an Italian stylist with sharp eyes and sharper opinions, arrived with an entourage. 3 hours later, the mirror reflected someone I barely recognized. My hair shimmered in golden waves, my nails were manicured, my makeup soft and flawless. Mr. Castellano has selected your gown, Valentina informed me. The dress arrived moments later, carried reverently on silk hangers, midnight blue, sleek and flowing, the color deep as the ocean. It fit perfectly, of course. Matching heels, sapphire earrings, a bracelet that sparkled like starlight. When I turned to the mirror, my breath caught. I looked untouchable. And that was the point. The door opened quietly behind me. Victor stood there in a tailored tuxedo, his dark hair combed back, a small blue flower pinned to his lapel the exact shade of my gown. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice quieter than usual. "Thank you," I managed, self-conscious under his gaze. "How's Ryan?" "He's fine. Sophie's wonderful." "Good." I had her thoroughly vetted. He moved closer, and I felt the now familiar shift in the air that always accompanied him. "The security team has been doubled. No one enters or leaves without my explicit approval." "What about Jack? If he tries to—" "He won't," Victor interrupted, voice turning hard. "Not after tonight." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. "First, this." Inside was an emerald ring surrounded by diamonds, glowing like a captured flame. "I don't understand," I whispered. "For tonight, you need to be more than just a woman I'm seen with." He slid the ring onto my left hand, the gesture slow and deliberate. "You need to be someone untouchable." I stared at it, stunned. "Your fiancé?" "My fiancé," Victor confirmed. "It's the safest position for you. No one touches what's mine." There was a possessiveness in his tone that should have frightened me. Instead, it sent a strange shiver through me, something I didn't want to name. "Jack won't believe it. He knows me." "It doesn't matter what he believes, it matters what he can prove." Victor's thumb traced an absent circle on the inside of my wrist. "This is moving too fast," I whispered. "Yesterday I was your maid. Today I'm wearing a fortune in jewelry, pretending to be engaged to you." "Would you prefer less protection?" he asked mildly. No, I just—" He stepped closer, his scent wrapping around me like smoke. "For tonight, it is. Can you handle that, Elena?" I lifted my chin. "I can handle anything for Ryan's safety." Something like approval flickered in his eyes. "Good. One more thing, when we're in public, I'll touch you. A hand at your back, your waist. I might kiss your cheek. Nothing inappropriate, but enough to convince them." My heartbeat stumbled. "I understand." "Do you?" he asked, gaze unwavering. "Because for this to work, you can't flinch. You have to look like you've been mine for months." I nodded. "I've been pretending my whole life, Victor. I can pretend for this." He offered his arm. "Then let's begin the performance." The car glided through the city toward the Westmore Hotel, where the charity gala was being held. Outside, flashes of lightning flickered over glass towers, the rain slicking the streets in silver light. "You're trembling," Victor said quietly. "I'm sorry." "Don't apologize." He reached across the seat, taking my hand in his. His palm was warm, steady. "Fear is natural. Acting despite fear, that's courage." "Is that what this is?" I asked bitterly. "Courage? It feels more like desperation." "Sometimes they're the same thing," he said. The Bentley slowed before a red carpet lined with photographers. Flashes exploded like tiny stars as Victor stepped out first, then turned to help me. The moment I emerged, the cameras went wild. "Smile," he murmured near my ear. "You're the envy of every woman here." I forced a smile, leaning into him as though we were truly lovers. Inside, chandeliers dripped with light. Music hummed from a string quartet, and conversation buzzed around us like static. Victor's hand rested at the small of my back, a quiet command, a warning, a comfort. He introduced me to politicians, business owners, judges, never using the word fiancé,
But the ring on my hand spoke loudly enough. "You're doing well," he murmured once, his breath brushing my ear. "Very convincing." "I told you I could play a part," I whispered back. He smiled faintly. "He's here. 3 o'clock. Don't look." My stomach dropped. "Jack!" "Breathe, Elena," Victor said softly. "Look at me."
I did. His eyes were dark, steady, grounding. "You are safe. He cannot hurt you here. Do you understand?" I nodded, barely. "Good. Now laugh, as if I said something funny." I forced a laugh, brittle but passable. "Better," he murmured. "Now, we walk toward the bar. He'll see you. He may approach." I wasn't ready, but I nodded anyway. Victor pressed a brief kiss to my forehead, a public gesture, intimate enough to silence doubt. Then I saw him. Jack Thornton. Polished, confident, utterly unchanged. His eyes found me and froze. Recognition. Shock. Then rage. "He's seen us," I whispered. "Good," Victor said. "Let's say hello." Before I could protest, we were standing in front of him. "Mr. Thornton," Victor said calmly, "I don't believe we've been formally introduced." Jack's face went pale. "Mr. Castellano, your reputation precedes you." "As does yours," Victor replied, smoothly. Jack's eyes darted to the ring on my hand, then to Victor's arm around my waist. "I see you've met Alina." "More than met. She's made me the happiest man in the city by agreeing to be my wife." The words fell like thunder. Jack's colleagues shifted uneasily. "Congratulations," Jack managed stiffly. "Though I must say it's unexpected. Alina and I were married until recently." "Separated," I corrected, my voice steady. "For nearly a year." Jack's jaw tightened. "A temporary situation. We have a child together, a son who needs his father." Victor's tone turned silk-edged steel. "Ryan is doing quite well, actually. He's settled nicely into our home." Jack blanched. "You've moved my son into your house without my consent?" "Your son?" Victor's voice dropped to a lethal quiet. "The son you nearly killed when you pushed Elena down the stairs?" The group around us froze. Even Jack's father, Richard Thornton, stepped forward, alarmed. "Mr. Castillo," he tried to placate, "perhaps this isn't the place." "Let me be clear," Victor interrupted, his eyes never leaving Jack. "Elena and Ryan are under my protection now. Any attempt to contact them will be considered a personal insult to me." He smiled, a razor-thin smile, "and I take personal insults very seriously." Jack's mask cracked, fury bleeding through the polished charm. "You can't just take my family." "Your family?" I cut in, anger shaking my voice. "You lost that right the moment you put your hands on me." "Be reasonable," Richard urged, his tone pleading. "Reasonable," Victor echoed softly, "an interesting word for men who protect abusers." Then, with disarming calm, he added, "Now, if you'll excuse us, my fiancé and I have other guests to greet." He guided me away, hand firm at my back, the weight of every eye in the room following us. "Breathe, Elena," he said again, his voice the only thing keeping me anchored. "You did well." As I exhaled shakily, I realized something terrifying. For the first time since I'd met Victor Castellano, I wasn't sure if I was pretending anymore.
The days that followed the gala unfolded in uneasy quiet, like the hush after a storm that everyone knows isn't truly over. Rumors rippled through the city, the Mafia boss and his mysterious fiancée, the child she'd hidden, the ex-husband who dared to challenge him. Victor didn't comment on any of it. He didn't need to. His silence carried more weight than any denial could. Inside the mansion, life took on a strange rhythm. Ryan adapted quickly, too young to notice the tension that still lingered in the air. He giggled when Angelo lifted him high, tugged on Sophie's hair, and fell asleep each night clutching his stuffed elephant. For the first time in months, I wasn't looking over my shoulder every time the door creaked. And yet, peace had its own kind of danger. It made me start to feel safe. One evening, after Sophie put Ryan to bed, I stepped out onto the balcony overlooking the sea. The sound of waves echoed faintly against the cliffs below. The sky streaked with gold and ash. Behind me, the door opened. I didn't have to turn to know it was Victor. His presence always changed the air, made it denser, sharper, somehow. "You should be resting," he said quietly. "So should you." He came to stand beside me, his sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, the powerful image the world knew, a cold, untouchable man in command, was gone. Here, he looked human, tired even. "You've been avoiding me." "I've been thinking," I admitted. "About what?" "About what happens next. About Jack." His expression darkened, the faint lines around his mouth tightening. "Jack Thornton won't bother you again." "You can't promise that." "I can, and I will."
I turned to face him, the salt wind whipping my hair across my face. "Don't, Victor. Don't make that promise unless you mean it, without bloodshed." His eyes flickered, something unreadable passing through them. "You think I want to kill him?" "I think you're capable of it," I said softly. For a moment, he didn't answer. Then, quietly, "You're right." Silence hung heavy between us, broken only by the distant crash of the waves. "Tell me," he said at last. "Everything. What he did, I need to understand. I don't want to relive it." "You already do," he said. "Every time you flinch when someone raises their voice, every time you triple-check a locked door, let me carry some of it." The words disarmed me. No one had ever said anything like that before. So I told him. I told him about the beginning, how Jack had been charming, gentle, attentive, how I'd mistaken control for love, how the possessiveness had crept in quietly, disguised as protection. Then came the shouting, the slaps that followed apologies, the isolation, the day he found out I was pregnant and accused me of trapping him. My voice trembled when I reached the part about the stairs. "He pushed me," I said. "We were arguing. He said he didn't believe the baby was his. I fell. I woke up in the hospital and they said I was lucky to still be alive, that my son was lucky too." Victor didn't move, didn't interrupt, but his jaw tightened until I thought it might crack. "Why didn't you go to the police?" "I did," I whispered. "His family made it disappear. Their money, their lawyers, they buried everything." For a long time, Victor said nothing. Then he exhaled, low and deliberate. "He'll never touch you again. Promise me," I said, stepping closer. "Promise me you won't hurt him. You want him to live after what he did to you? I want Ryan to grow up without more blood on his name." His gaze softened just slightly. Physically unharmed. That's the best I can promise. I hesitated. What does that mean? It means he'll lose everything that gives him power. His money, his reputation, his protection. And when he's standing in the ruins, he'll know who put him there. He spoke the words with calm certainty, as if the verdict had already been written. "Victor, don't," he said gently. "You've carried his cruelty long enough. Let me carry the rest." Something inside me shifted then. Not trust, not entirely, but something dangerously close to it. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my face. His fingers lingered just a moment too long. "You're safe here, Elena." For once, I believed him. But as he turned and walked back inside, I caught a glimpse of his reflection in the glass door, eyes burning with something fierce and unholy. He had made his promise, and in that quiet, terrifying moment, I realized Victor Castellano never made promises he didn't intend to keep. That night, as I stood in the doorway of Ryan's nursery, listening to his even breaths, I understood something else too. The man I'd once thought of as a captor had become my protector, and somewhere deep inside, against every warning my heart could muster, I was starting to see him as something more. The following weeks blurred together in a rhythm of uneasy normalcy. Mornings with Ryan in the garden, evenings spent in the library pretending to read while Victor took endless phone calls. For all his power, the man never seemed to rest. So when he told me we were attending another gala, this time at the governor's mansion, I felt the dread return. "It's necessary," he said, as I hesitated at the bottom of the stairs, dressed in a silver gown that shimmered like water under the lights. "I thought the first gala already did that," I said quietly. "This one will make it permanent." His tone left no room for argument. The mansion gleamed that night, full of politicians and benefactors pretending to believe in charity. Victor moved through them effortlessly, every handshake and nod a display of power cloaked in civility. I played my part, smiling, polite, poised, but every flash of a camera, every whispered conversation felt like a spotlight aimed directly at my lives. Then I saw him. Jack, standing near the marble staircase, drink in hand, smirking as if the world still revolved around him. My fingers trembled around my clutch. "Victor." "I see him," Victor murmured. "Stay by my side." But Jack moved faster. Within seconds, he was there, his voice slick with poison. "Well, if it isn't my darling wife." I forced a calm I didn't feel. "Don't cause a scene."
"You already did that," he sneered. "Running away with your bastard child and shacking up with a criminal. You really upgraded, didn't you?" My breath caught, but before I could speak, Victor's hand landed gently at my waist, a subtle, possessive gesture that carried more weight than 1,000 words. "Watch your mouth, Thornton," he said, voice like glass. Jack laughed, drunk on arrogance. "You think wearing a suit makes you respectable? You're nothing but a thug with money. And she?" That was as far as he got before Angelo appeared, his movement swift, his tone deceptively casual. "Mr. Thornton," Angelo interrupted smoothly, "I think it's time you found your car. You're making our guests uncomfortable." Jack stepped back, realizing too late that 2 other men in black had materialized behind Angelo. "You can't keep her forever, Castagno," he hissed. "She's mine. She'll always be mine." Victor's expression didn't change, but his words dropped like a guillotine. "You forfeited that claim the moment you hurt her,
And if you ever speak to her again, publicly or privately, your father won't have enough money to buy what's left of you." Jack paled, his bravado crumbling under the weight of Victor's calm fury. Then, with a weak laugh, he turned and disappeared into the crowd. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Cameras flashed, people smiled, champagne flowed, but I couldn't shake the image of Jack's eyes burning into mine. I should have known it wasn't over. It happened just after midnight. The estate alarms shattered the silence, red lights flashing in the hallways. Sophie burst into my room, clutching Ryan. "Someone's inside," she cried. "Angelo said to lock the doors." Before I could react, the power went out. The house plunged into darkness. Then footsteps, heavy, close. The handle turned once, twice. I grabbed Ryan from Sophie, pressing his head against my shoulder, heart racing so hard it hurt. Suddenly, the door flew open, light flooding in behind a tall, familiar figure. "Ilea!" It was Victor. He took Ryan from my arms, handed him to Sophie. "Downstairs, panic room. Go." She hesitated. "What about—" "Go." The command in his voice left no space for argument. Sophie ran, clutching Ryan tight. Victor turned back to me, checking me over with eyes sharp as blades. "Did he touch you?" "No," I whispered, "but—" "Then stay behind me." He drew a gun from under his jacket, moving into the hall. 2 of his men were already there. "East corridor breach. 1 intruder, armed. We've got him cornered." Minutes later, it was over. The man they caught was one of the maintenance staff, quiet, forgettable, the kind of person you'd pass in a hallway without noticing. He'd been paid by an anonymous source to deliver something to my quarters, but the cash trail wasn't clean enough. Angelo traced it back directly to a dummy account under Jack Thornton's private fund. When Victor heard, the calm broke. "Enough," he said, pacing the study like a caged animal. "Victor!" "He's crossed every line. You, Ryan, my home. He's made it personal." His eyes found mine fierce and burning. "You once told me you had evidence, financial records, transfers. Where are they?" I swallowed hard. "Hidden. Safety deposit box at Harbor Bank." "Get them," he said. "Tomorrow. With those documents, we'll end the Thorntons legally. No blood, no bullets." There was steel in his voice, but something else too. Determination. Almost relief. "The defensive game is over," he said quietly. "Now, we take control." He turned away, staring out the window toward the city skyline. The reflection of red security lights flickered across his face like fire. "If we do this," I said softly, "there's no turning back." There never was. By morning, Victor had made his decision public, through whispers, photographs, and one statement to the press that spread through every corner of the city. Mr. Castagno and Miss Elena Hart will celebrate their engagement in 2 weeks' time. The announcement landed like a bomb. For his empire, it was a strategy. For the Thorntons, it was a declaration of war. For me, it was the moment the masquerade stopped being a lie, because somewhere deep down, I wasn't sure I wanted it to be one anymore.
"It's perfect," said Valentina, the event planner, surveying the ballroom with pride. "The whole city will be watching." I caught my reflection in a nearby mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. My hair swept up in elegant waves, a gown of soft ivory hugging my frame, the emerald ring glinting under the chandelier. It was supposed to be an act, but the way Victor looked at me whenever he thought I wasn't watching, steady, possessive, protective, made it harder to remember that. Before the guests arrived, Victor gathered us, me, Ryan, and Angelo, for a private photo session in the East Garden. "Family portraits," the photographer said, arranging us beneath the archway of white roses. Ryan giggled in my arms, tugging at Victor's tie. "He likes you," I teased softly. Victor smiled faintly. "He has good instincts." For the camera, he placed a hand around my waist. The warmth of his touch settled me, grounding me in a way I couldn't explain. "Smile, Mrs. Castellano," the photographer said without thinking. I froze, but Victor didn't correct him. Instead, he simply looked at me, eyes unreadable, and I smiled. The shutter clicked, the moment captured, an image that blurred fiction and reality forever. By evening, the mansion filled with senators, business magnates, and high-ranking officials. A string quartet played softly, laughter rising above the music. Everywhere I turned, cameras flashed. Every smile I gave felt rehearsed, yet Victor's presence beside me made it bearable. His hand at my back, the reassuring weight of his gaze. It was all part of the act. Or was it? "You're doing well," he murmured when we paused near the fountain. "So are you," I replied, "almost like you've done this before." "I've never done this before," he said simply. Something in his tone made me look up, but before I could ask what he meant, Angelo appeared, expression grim. "We have a problem. He's here." "Who?" Victor's voice was already sharp. "Richard Thornton." The name turned my stomach cold. Jack's father. The man whose influence had buried police reports, silenced witnesses, and turned my life into a ghost story. "He wasn't invited," Victor said. "He doesn't care," Angela replied. "He's demanding to speak with you privately, says it concerns your arrangement with his son." Victor's jaw tightened. "Keep everyone calm. No one leaves, no one panics." I caught his sleeve. "Victor, please, don't let him provoke you." "He won't, but he'll finally listen." The confrontation took place in the study. Doors closed, guards posted outside. I wasn't there, but later, Angelo told me everything. Richard Thornton arrived alone, his arrogance intact. "You've made quite the spectacle tonight. My family's name dragged through gossip columns because of some misguided nurse you decided to—" "Careful," Victor interrupted, calm but lethal. He ignored the warning. "Let's not pretend this is about love. You're using her to humiliate your son." Victor leaned back in his chair, opening a folder. Inside were photographs, transaction records, bank transfers, all stamped with Thornton accounts. "Your son," Victor said, "embezzled over $6 million from your family's foundation. He funneled it through shell charities, all traceable. I have the documents, signed and time-stamped." Richard's face blanched. "You can't." "I can. And if I release them, every political ally you've cultivated will vanish by morning." Richard swallowed hard. "What do you want?" "Simple," Victor said. "Jack leaves the country, permanently. He forfeits any claim to Ryan, and you make sure he stays gone." Richard hesitated. "And in return?" "I destroy the evidence, publicly." The silence stretched. Finally, Richard nodded. "He'll be on a plane by dawn." Victor closed the folder, his expression unchanging. "Then we understand each other." Hours later, as the party wound down, Victor found me on the terrace overlooking the sea. The night air was cool, the waves glittering beneath the moonlight. From inside came the muffled sounds of music and laughter, the celebration of a life that wasn't entirely mine. "He's gone," Victor said softly, stepping beside me. I turned, startled. "What do you mean?" "Jack.
He'll leave the country by morning. You and Ryan are safe now." For a long moment, I couldn't speak. The relief was too big, too sharp. "No more running," I whispered. "No more fear," he echoed. The words hung between us, fragile and real. I looked at him then, not the crime lord, not the man who had rescued me from a nightmare, but the person who had stood beside me through every shadow since then. "Why did you do all this for me?" I asked. Victor's gaze softened, though his voice stayed low. "Because no one ever did it for me." The music drifted out from the ballroom, slow and haunting. Without another word, he offered his hand.
I hesitated only a second before placing mine in his. We danced beneath the stars, the night air cool against my skin, the rest of the world falling away. For the first time, I wasn't pretending. But when he looked at me, really looked at me, I saw the question in his eyes, the same one burning in my own heart. Now that the threat was gone, now that the masquerade had served its purpose, what were we to each other when the lie had started to feel like the truth? The guests had long departed. The mansion that only hours ago pulsed with music and light now stood quiet under the pale wash of moonlight. From the terrace, the ocean stretched endlessly, black silk streaked with silver, the night wind carrying the scent of salt and roses. I stood alone for a moment, listening to the stillness. Somewhere down the hall, Ryan slept soundly in his crib. For the first time in years, he was safe. We both were. Behind me, the door opened. I didn't need to turn to know it was Victor. "You should be resting," he said softly. "So should you," I replied. He joined me at the railing, jacket gone, shirt unbuttoned at the throat. The moonlight caught the edge of the scar above his brow, the one I'd never dared to ask about. Until now. "Where did you get it?" I asked quietly. He hesitated, then answered. "My father, the night he killed my mother." I turned to him, startled. He rarely spoke of his past, never in detail, never like this. He exhaled, gaze fixed on the horizon. "I was 9. I heard them arguing. He'd been drinking, as always. I tried to stop him, but..." His voice faltered for the first time since I'd known him. "She died before the police came. They called it an accident. It wasn't." I reached for his hand instinctively, but he didn't look at me. "I made her a promise that no one under my roof would ever be hurt again. Not if I could stop it. Everything I've done, every rule, every wall, it all came from that night." Silence settled between us, thick with understanding. "You've spent your whole life trying to protect people, but you never let anyone protect you." He looked at me then, eyes darker than the sea. "And yet somehow you did." I shook my head. "I didn't do anything. You reminded me what it feels like to believe in something that isn't fear." The words undid me. For months, I'd built my own walls, out of survival, out of mistrust. And now, standing before him, I realized they'd already crumbled. "You think I'm the devil," he said, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "I did," I admitted. "But maybe the devil was just a man who wanted to keep his promises." He laughed quietly, a sound rare and low. "You should stay away from men like me, Elena." "Too late?" I whispered. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then he reached out, brushing his thumb against my jaw, tracing a line down my neck. "If you stay," he said slowly,
It has to be by choice, not fear, not obligation. My breath caught. Then this is my choice. He froze, eyes searching mine for any hint of doubt. Finding none, he leaned forward, his voice barely a whisper. Then God help us both. Our lips met, slow at first, then certain. It wasn't the desperate collision of two broken people clinging to safety. It was something quieter, deeper. A promise reborn in the dark. When we finally broke apart, I rested my forehead against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart. You once told me you don't make promises you can't keep. And I don't, he replied. So hear this one, Elena. Whatever comes, you and Ryan will never face it alone. I smiled against his shirt. Then hear mine. I'm not running anymore. He pressed a kiss to my hair. Good, because I'm done chasing ghosts. By morning, the headlines were everywhere. Castellano announces private ceremony, the maid who stole the Mafia's heart. The gossip sites called it scandal. The city called it unbelievable. But inside the mansion by the sea, none of that mattered. I watched Victor in the garden, kneeling beside Ryan as he helped him scatter rose petals into the fountain. The man who once ruled by fear now laughed, softly, freely with my son. And in that moment, I knew. No longer his employee, no longer his pretend fiancé. Elena Castellano was his partner, his family, his equal. The devil I once feared had become the man I loved. And for the first time, the story wasn't about survival, it was about home. My favorite part was when Victor looked at Elena and said, "You and Ryan will never face it alone," proving she had finally found the safety and love she'd been denied her whole life. What was your favorite moment of justice or redemption in her story? Drop it in the comments below. I'd love to hear what moved you most. Don't miss more powerful love stories born from danger and courage. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.